Now back to Morningline. Here's Steve Helms.
And welcome, folks. This is Morningline, KWTO News Talk Radio. If you would like to be a part of the show, it's 862-9977, 1-800-375-0056. And we are pleased to have Winston Apple. He is a candidate for Lieutenant Governor on the Democrat ticket. Good morning, sir, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. We want to have all the candidates because we think it's the listeners, the viewers, the constituents that are going to make that decision. If you just come just a little bit closer to the mic, we'll be great. And tell us a little bit about yourself, because I'm sure that a lot of our listeners, with most candidates, don't know who you are.
Okay. Well, my name is Winston Apple. I'm a retired school teacher. I taught government, economics, and history at my old alma mater, Van Horn High School, for a little over 20 years.
Go Van Horn.
Yes. I started in the middle of the year and figured out pretty quickly why the gentleman I was replacing had retired in the middle of the year. It was very much like Welcome Back, Kotter, but I hung in there a little bit longer than Kotter did and really enjoyed it. And before and after my teaching career, I've been a singer-songwriter. I was inducted into the Kansas Music Hall of Fame last year, which would be a bigger honor if anyone had heard of the Kansas Music Hall of Fame.
Maybe get your show down in Branson.
There you go. I was elected to the Democratic National Committee last Saturday at the state convention in Sedalia, so that is a great honor.
On a side note, so is Bernie going to ultimately endorse Hillary, you think?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
I think he already has.
Oh, he has.
When he was on Seth Meyers a few weeks ago, he was asked about the controversy where she wouldn't say he was qualified, so he started saying she wasn't. And Seth Meyers asked him about that, and he said, listen, on her worst day, Hillary Clinton is 100 times better than any Republican running. That's when we still had 3 running.
But he hasn't come out and endorsed. But anyway, I don't want to get sidetracked on that because we got more important things to talk about. Tell us, if you would, why you're running.
Well, the climate crisis would be a primary motivator, but I would have to say that it was the fact that Bernie Sanders began running, and I had the feeling that a political revolution that is long overdue, in my opinion, just might happen this year, and I wanted to do anything and everything I could to help. And with the reaction that Donald Trump has gotten, that has only strengthened my belief. These are 2 very different candidates with 2 very different approaches, and some agreement but some disagreement about the issues. But they are both populist, and they are rousing the populace to say enough is enough. And we don't want a government that only represents Wall Street, the big banks, and the corporations. We want a government that represents all the people. We want to elect people who will fulfill their constitutional duty from the preamble to promote the general welfare. Or here in Missouri, as we say with our state motto as translated, the welfare of the people shall be the supreme law. And our government's not doing a very good job of that right now. There's a lot of people that need a hand up, and at best we're giving them a hand out.
And you bring up some interesting issues. Is that kind of the things you've echoed? Is that similar to what you're hearing from the constituents and voters that are out there?
I have been talking a lot about Franklin Roosevelt's Economic Bill of Rights. 1944 State of the Union address, he stated very clearly that his belief that every worker has the right to a job that pays a living wage, that living wage includes not just food and shelter, but health care as a right, educational opportunities as a right, Social Security and recreation. Interestingly, Roosevelt's thoughts are really echoed by Ronald Reagan, who proposed replacing welfare with workfare. And between Roosevelt and Reagan, I think you've got a pretty good idea there, and we ought to give it a try.
You again bring up some, I think, very interesting issues, and the first thing I'll agree 100%. I think Hillary and Trump are very different.
I'm talking about Bernie and Trump, the 2 populists.
Well, he is, but but it's going to ultimately come down to Hillary and Trump.
Yes.
And so, when you talk about a living wage, when you talk about health care, to me, I haven't heard too many people say that the Obamacare has been that successful.
I'm not a big fan of Obamacare.
Just curious, what we'll get in. This may be off the topic, but what are your thoughts that you would do differently?
I would have a single-payer health care system. At the very least, I would have added a public option, which was never even voted on in Congress. The Affordable Care Act has not made health care too much more affordable. It has redistributed income from the top to enable some people who couldn't afford health insurance to have it, and that's wonderful. I'm, as a general rule, not a big fan of the redistribution of income. I think that people should be enabled to pay their own way. But the big problem with the Affordable Care Act is that it was written by and for largely the benefit of private for-profit health insurance companies. Now, I'm also a big fan of the free enterprise system, but not where basic things like health care are concerned. We can, like every other major country in the world, provide quality health care for every American. No one should be shut out of that system.
We are talking with Winston Apple. He is a lieutenant governor candidate on the Democrat ticket. And folks, we will be right back after these messages.
Now back to Morningline. Here's Steve Helms.
And welcome back, folks, and thank you for joining us on this Friday, June 24th, here in Morningline, 862-9977, 1-800-375-0056. We are speaking with Winston Apple. He is a candidate for lieutenant governor on the Democrat ticket. Again, sir, thank you for joining us.
We're very, very glad to be here.
And you brought up some issues. I wish we had a whole lot more time because...
let's just stay on the air.
Yeah, well, if we could, we would. But, you know, life is limited with resources, and that's one of the things here. You're running for lieutenant governor. You mentioned that you're against redistribution of income.
Yes.
And yet you mentioned a litany of things like
I
living
favor
wage.
minimizing the redistribution.
Okay, minimizing. Okay. So
benefits received principle whenever possible, and helping people pay their own way whenever possible. Giving them a hand up instead of a handout.
Would you mind explaining the hand up and a handout a little more?
Well, if we were to take Benjamin Franklin's advice and apply that to Roosevelt's Economic Bill of Rights, Benjamin Franklin once said that well done is better than well said. And how do you actually ensure these rights to a socially useful job that pays a living wage? Well, you do it the way Roosevelt did with New Deal jobs projects. We have a climate crisis that needs to be addressed, and even if we didn't have a climate crisis, it would make a lot of sense to move to clean renewable energy and electric cars just for the sake of the environment. We have infrastructure crumbling and technology now where we could upgrade our highways to where we could generate electricity from them. The snow would melt off automatically without the trucks, and there's all sorts of benefits with this new technology. Ultimately, you have to make the federal government the employer of last resort. If you can't find a job that pays a living wage anywhere else, you go to the employment office, not the unemployment office. You're not going for an unemployment check, you're going for a paycheck. And you're going to do socially useful work to get it. Here in Missouri, of course, that's the federal government. I'm running
so as
for
lieutenant governor, what
yes.
do you think you would actually implement? And again, I want to give you as much time here to share your views.
I had drafted and was intending to try to get on the ballot this year a Green New Deal for Missouri that would be financed with a tax on capital gains. It would enable someone like Warren Buffett to move to Missouri and no longer feel guilty about paying a lower rate of taxes than his secretary. It would roughly tax capital gains at the same rate as other income. Another concept, by the way, that Ronald Reagan favored. He did not favor a lower tax rate for capital gains. We'd also, if you do this at the federal level, you have the benefit that you're moving people off welfare. And all that money going out for welfare payments could help to pay for this.
How would, one of the big issues that are floating around, and I know you didn't bring it up, but you did talk about infrastructure and New Deal projects. Roads and bridges are a critical issue right now, along with expanding Medicaid. A lot of folks want to do that. How would these be paid for? Because right now Missouri is barely paying for the current growth in Medicaid.
Right. Well, of course, the Medicaid offer that's been on the table for years now is that the federal government would pay for it. And the answer is we, Missouri taxpayers, have already paid for it. That money's gone to Washington. But we're refusing to take our share back. The money that Missouri taxpayers are paying is still going into the Medicaid system. It's just going to other states. because our legislature has refused to let them return our money to us.
I guess there'd be 2 points that I've heard as arguments. Number one is with the deficit at the federal level, we're really that money is really just dead on our children.
Right.
So expanding Medicaid, we've only done it in 31 states. It's outgrown what they projected originally by like 146 billion. There's 4 million people in just the 31 states. So the numbers they said it would initially cost have ballooned like most government, just like Part D and everything else.
Right.
The government says we're going to do this. Oh, it's only going to cost this much. Then in reality, and then the other key is, what about the idea that, the federal government says it's going to pay for it now, but a year or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10,
Right.
it says, no, we're going to pay for only 80%.
Well, if you put everyone to work on socially useful jobs that pay a living wage, and you help with training and direction and the program's well managed, then you have the opportunity to do away with Medicaid except for truly disabled people. And if we're mentioning truly disabled people, I'd just like to mention our veterans.
Right.
We have homeless veterans. That should be an oxymoron. There should not be a veteran who is homeless. We have the working poor. No one who is working 40, 50, 60 hours a week should be living in poverty. Now, that's where some income needs to be redistributed, but it needs to be redistributed on the basis that these people are given socially useful work to do, and that they do it.
Now, you're in the Springfield area. You're not from here. You came in. There was an event or something, I assume, that you were
Yes.
here for. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, the Springfield Bernie Sanders community and I have a very torrid love affair going on. This is my 8th trip to Springfield, and I've made a lot of new friends down here. The Bernie Sanders movement in Missouri, and we found this out in the wake of the events at the Missouri Democratic State Convention last Saturday. We got 4 Bernie Sanders supporters, including myself, elected to seats on the Democratic National Committee. We passed 19 resolutions that were written by Bernie Sanders supporters, and we have been the talk of the nation among the Bernie Sanders community for the last few days. Very impressed that we pulled this off in a state that Bernie narrowly lost to Hillary Clinton. And how did we do that? And I can tell you that we did that because, from what I'm hearing from the national campaign, Missouri had arguably the best volunteer effort for Bernie Sanders of any state in the country. And that community has been wondering for some time now, what will happen to our movement if Bernie Sanders does not get the nomination? And while I'm among those who say, let's wait and see who gets the nomination, there's a long ways to go till July 25th, and who knows what will happen.
And I haven't asked this of any other candidate, but, I mean, you bring up this national issue. And one of the things, as I'm in the Republican Party, and so but for now, yeah. So I see the 25% that super delegates to me is being doesn't seem fair.
No.
And
the Republican Party is more Democratic than the Democratic Party on that issue.
You heard it on Morningline first. And again, I appreciate your spirited and I think the Bernie Sanders folks, that's why they've done so well, is they have passion.
Right.
And they believe in what they're doing,
right.
and it really has to do with the individuals, and to a degree, Trump's the same.
And it's very interesting because I favor doing away with the superdelegates. That is something nearly every Bernie Sanders supporter favors, and yet now, 4 years from now, if we don't do away with them, I will be a superdelegate by virtue of being on the Democratic National Committee. And I have to say, if they want to corrupt me and pull me over to the side of keeping the superdelegates, there's a simple way to do that. Give us all capes and the ability to fly, leap tall buildings in a single bound, and be more powerful than a locomotive.
Well, you think they can do that? We could pass a law,
Well,
maybe?
I saw a TV show when I was a child that indicated those things were possible, but I don't know if we're from Krypton or not.
Probably not. So we've got just a couple minutes left, about a minute and a half. What would you like to tell the voters that we haven't already talked about?
I would like to talk to the Donald Trump supporters. And I would like to point out that if you're looking for a party that agrees with you that we should not be moving factories to Mexico and then letting them bring the products back in duty-free, if you want to see every worker in America with a guaranteed job that pays a living wage, after you cast your vote for Donald Trump, come right on over to the Democratic side of the ticket and cast all the rest of your votes on our side.
Very good. And where could folks go to get more information about your candidacy for Lieutenant Governor right here in the great state of Missouri?
www.appleformissouri.com.
And you could maybe do something with that apple a day thing for keeps the doctor away. I don't know.
Well, I can tell you that we got to hope that I don't become corrupt at some point, because if I do, I could spoil the whole barrel.
Well, folks, this is Morning Line. We appreciate having Winston Apple with us today, sir. We very much enjoyed our conversation.
I appreciate the opportunity.
And if you would like to learn more, of course, we're going to have his website on our show information page by just going to newstalk560.com and go to the show's link and then show information. And, of course, we hope to have you on in the future, and good luck in your campaign.
Thank you very much.
All right, folks, and this is Morning Line, and we'll be right back after these messages.